podcast. I think we're on episode 14. Stevie, how are you doing?
Wow, I'm good, thanks. And hello to all the viewers out there, wherever you are in the world, whatever time it is you're watching this, whether it be live or on playback or on catch up or whatever you call it these days.
Yeah. We've got a good show as always, and as
Have
always,
we? Have we?
yeah, and as always, our third leg, our third member is always fashionably late. I think he went to high school with Lauren Hill, and they have a special entrance when they come in late. So Sheldon will be joining us, even though he promised us he'll be early today. But hey, it's how
He's
things
late.
are. But anyway, guys, today, we're doing our top 10 favorite male R&B groups, and so that'll be great. So, but before we start that, Stevie, what's been happening? Well, I mean, anything that's in the world of music and stuff?
You know what? I've been that busy with work recently and then obviously getting playlists ready for my radio shows. It's like I've been finding myself watching stuff on YouTube that's just completely unrelated to like work and music, just to like get a break. I don't know. Do you ever go on YouTube and just watch some like bizarre videos that you'd never really thought you'd be interested in before? Has that happened to you?
Wow, yeah, I don't know if I no not necessarily, but sometimes, I mean, somebody sent me the link, and I don't know if you guys have watched the Bryce Wilson interview, but somebody sent me the link of Mantronic's interview, so I didn't know much about him, the guy. So so I've done saw myself doing that, and there's also a new channel, DOA, who was the bass player for the Rhythm Nations tour, good friend of Chucky Booker. He has this channel called the DOA Playlist, and he interviews a lot of musicians. So if you ever get to check out his channel, so I sometimes then start watching that, and just to pass away time.
Well, it's like, my social media feeds is just like, it's all music, and I think I went on YouTube one day, and there's just like, in my suggestion feed, there was just this random video for like some guy sleeping. He's doing stealth camping, and he ended up sleeping. And like a roundabout, when you're driving along and you come to a roundabout,
Yeah.
and in the middle of the roundabout might have some bushes in it. Can you imagine, like, you'd never think there'd be someone in the middle of them bushes sleeping there all night, camping, cooking up some food. But yeah, just daft, ridiculous stuff like that. I mean, half an hour, I was like, just took me away completely. But anyway, we'll get back to the music in a minute.
Yes. Anyway,
camping on a roundabout. There's a good suggestion if you want to just get away from the world for half an hour. There's loads of it on YouTube. Mr. Sheldon's here.
Yes. As we always say.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Fashionably late, Sheldon.
I like that third. I like this. This is good.
This one.
Yeah, I got disconnected, so I had to go back in again. Go ahead.
Okay. How's it been, Sheldon?
Well.
Okay. Yeah. So we're going to get to some music news and stuff before we start our list. And I know there were some comments about our list and the time frame, but anything in the world of music that you wanted to over the past 2 weeks that you wanted to catch us up on?
Go ahead, Steve.
There's a track. There's a couple of British, UK, London things, New Jack things that are of interest. There's a guy called Lucas Seto has done a track called Masterpiece, which it's a good swing track. It's a bit like Bruno Mars, Finesse, that kind of vibe, but it works. It's good. And there's a guy called, is it Beckworth? BKWH or something. Can't Beat the Weekend. There's like there's a whole bunch of remixes. 2B3 has done a 2B3 from the mid-90s. He remixed Bobby Brown and Portrait and a few other things from the 90s. He's done a remix on it, and it's called the Cutie 911 remix. So that's interesting. And there is something forthcoming from Lindsley as well called Back to the 90s, featuring MC. So the UK at the moment is leading the way for the New Jack 90s revival, it seems.
Well, we need to get Lindsay on because we were trying to get doing an interview with him last year, but he was in the middle of doing some production stuff. So, but now he's got this stuff out. So I'll reach out to him to see if we can get him as a guest on the show.
Lindsley, you mean? Lindsley.
Yes, Lindsley. Yes, and also, guys, yeah, and we've got a number of guests that are looking to come on to our podcast, New Jack Swing podcast. So hopefully we'll be able to get them. Yeah, Sheldon, anything that you can think of?
Yeah, what's happening now is you're starting to see the parallel. Well, we saw all the '90s groups going out on tour, doing really, really well. So now there's a trend where people are starting to see the disparity, where there's a lot of classic rap groups from that same era, from the New Jack era, the '90s era, that are really having a great time on tour. A lot of healthy touring revenue, opportunities, compared to like the newer groups. They're canceling tours. They're not selling a lot of tickets. So it just kind of just goes back to, that era, 80s and the 90s, where, though not only did they have the records, the big records, but they also had the showmanship. So, yeah, that's been a major issue here,
Okay.
Oh, there's one thing I need to mention, and it's mainly for UK viewers on the BBC iPlayer. There's a 3-part series of the first ladies of hip hop. I've only watched part 1 so far, and it's about hip hop going from the late 70s in the disco era into the 80s. But it's an amazing documentary. You got Roxanne Shante in there. You got Millie. You highlight Millie Jackson, and I thought, wow, to highlight her, because she wasn't known as a rapper. She was known as quite a soul singer, really, or quite and she did a bit of comedy, didn't she? She's quite rude with some of the lyrics. And you could say she started off the whole, say, Little Kim, Cardi B, that kind of style of rapping. You could go back to her because she's quite, quite boisterous with the rap. So that 3-part documentary on the first ladies of hip hop, if you've got the iPlayer, brilliant.
Okay.
Superb footage as well.
The BBC is on it, man.
It was probably my favorite female rapper anyway of all time.
Who's that?
Yeah.
Roxanne Shante.
Okay.
Yeah, the BBC is on it, man. That's one thing, man, I love, is that, when you all do the documentaries out there, you really just go deep, and there's a lot of history and stuff where we have it, but it's done in a segment-minded, programming-minded, format, but the BBC superior to none, man.
Yeah. Okay.
Very excellent job.
Yeah, we got Nat5 says, yeah, just watched episode 1, 2, really interesting. Yeah, I've got it saved up, but yeah, I mean that I know we're going to get into our top stuff soon, but also just it seems as if Coffee Brown, the group that came out in I think 2000, with the Weekend thing. So they've reunited, and they've just done a show in Germany. They were supposed to come on. Maybe they were just too eager to get the rehearsals for their first show out the way, which happened yesterday in Germany. So hopefully when they get back to the States, I can get them back on for an interview to talk about their reunion and stuff like that. So just looking out for that. And yeah, we'll just look out for that and stuff. But anyway, without a doubt, and also the reviews seems to still be going good for the Tony tour. It looks as if they are really things are going fine. It is quite a challenge because I had the other 6 members who were part of the group. When you look at the video, like Feels Good, and you see them all on stage as the original Tony, 6 of them all playing, and it was all stuff. And then you listen to Dwayne in interviews talking about him, Tim, and Raphael. It is kind of hard to just see how they just sort of left out their cousins. It's pretty much their cousins were brought in, and they just said, it's easier to split it 3 ways than 6 ways. But anyway, that's a drama for them. But actually, if you go watch Tony, I'm hearing that the reviews are that it's just electric. So, if you can check them out.
and they're doing a lot of television. They're doing a lot of press here in America.
Okay,
It
yeah,
came out. It's like it just came out all over again.
yeah. It's yeah, you know, it's yeah. Hopefully, I can. Hopefully, I know Raphael wasn't too happy with the interview I did with Don Robinson, talking about how she lost her house because of him. And I know he saw it. He saw it because a lot of people told him about the interview, and he quoted it in an interview he did. So yeah, I wonder how that goes. But anyway, outside of that, guys, so here it is, our top 10 favorite male groups. Now, Sheldon, you seem to have had you had a thought about, we were talking about like trying to get the mid 80s to the just before 2000 just to capture a particular era, you know, but you seem to have thought that actually maybe we probably should have changed the parameters slightly.
No, it wasn't what I thought it would be. It was the thing is that when you pick that era, when you pick the year 1985, and we're going from 1985 to what was it, 97 is what you said initially. So the thing is that if we're doing groups from that window, obviously, you know, with the cutoff, I would say 87 would be the cutoff when you start looking at that, because you know when you see around like 85, if we're talking about adding groups to that window,
Yeah.
a lot of the groups you're starting to see a shift in black music, where black music now is starting to focus on a lot of solo groups, a lot of solo acts. So the groups are starting to kind of like fade away for a variety of reasons. You know, there's also the economic aspect of it, where it becomes too expensive to have bands. Then of course the music videos are coming out, so everything is focusing on like the lead singer. And then of course technology is coming in, and technology is killing the band's identity. So all of these three components start to make the band concept to be extinct. So when you look at 85, if we're starting off on that and we're looking at including bands, you know, we have to ask ourselves, okay, who are we going to go ahead? I'm not saying just literally, but if we're picking that year, figuring out, okay,
Well,
well,
an example of that would be like Cameo, of what you're saying.
Cameo, that's on one of my lists. That's on one of my lists. But if
You know,
you look at,
you go back to 86.
no, but what I'm saying is that Cameo is one of the ones that are on my list. They're the exception. They're the exception.
What I'm saying is, to back up your point,
yeah,
Sheldon, it's like Cameo started out. There was tons of them in the group, and then by 86, you've got 3 of them on stage.
Yeah,
and they're all using synthesizers. There's no need for a band.
But they're the example.
Yeah.
Not the rule, but just like you said, it's because that they're on my list as well. Because when you look at them, when you start looking at 85 is the year where they come off, where they start to roll into, they become bigger and bigger. Where everyone else starts to fade away, they're like almost the only group from that era who becomes bigger than what they were previously. So I was just thinking that when you said 85, I was like, wow, what made them pick that window? And obviously, when you start looking at 85 to 99, you've got like 3 different eras of music, because you're dealing with, you know, the quote unquote techno, and then you start sliding in by the end of the decade, this New Jack Swing, and then you slide into by the middle of the end of the decade. Now it's just hip hop soul. So I just was kind of curious to figure that, because if we do 90s groups, and I won't say the names of the groups because we're going to kind of go into that.
Yeah.
Certain groups I was going to exclude because they wouldn't really be classified as a 90s group because they overlap that. But again, that's just what my question was. But yeah, we're good.
Yeah, okay.
It's funny because I think Cameo again were one of them group. They missed a trick in the, you know, they released the album. Is it All Men Wear Black, or around 1989,
90? Yeah, 90 is all men wear black. Their last, you know, that kind of like, it was to the point where the music had shifted.
Why didn't they make the album New Jack? That's what I'm saying. They missed a trick there.
Well, they did. They had some of the drums and all
that.
They had some of the drums, but the thing is that the songs themselves were extension of the records that they were making before. It's just the fact that when you hear the album, it's almost like it's totally out of place. They're trying to do it. They're trying to do the sound, but they're out of place, because think about it. These guys put their first record out like in 1975, 76. Think about it. It's 15 years later. So if I'm 21, 22, these guys are probably like about maybe 15 years older than me. So they're like almost 40 years old. So, but when you look in terms of what they did, because Larry Berry Black, you're talking about to come out with records from 75 to, let's say, to 88. From 75 to 88, every record they put out was either gold or platinum. That's 13 years. You got a lot of R&B groups, man, that came out way after that never had a long run.
Mhm.
But you know, they're in my group and they're on my list, so I'll kind of explain why
Okay.
they are in my list. But
Well,
we
if
can
you
go
look
ahead
at
and jump.
it's like two years earlier, right? One of them's producing tracks for Bobby Brown's debut album.
Yeah.
So, but 2 years on, Bobby's moved on from that, and he's working with LA and Babyface and Teddy Riley.
Mhm.
And you know, they're entering 1990. Aren't they looking at it and going, well, hold on a minute, our sound isn't happening. We've just worked with Bobby Brown. It didn't quite work, our sound for Bobby. It was a minor hits he was having. He's just blew up with this new sound. Maybe we should get a new producer in, a younger producer, just to produce us. I mean, Larry Blackman's voice over a new, I think it would have been amazing.
Yeah,
Same with the Gap Band. Same with the Gap Band as well.
And the Gap Band tried. The Gap Band tried.
Yeah. They were a bit better at it.
And they were better. And what happened was when they did an album, they put out an album around the same time as the Guy album that was out. And their record label made them go back into the studio and said, you need to make a record like Guy, when Guy is the one that is like influenced by them. But they did it came out with a couple of records. Their last album, the last good album they made was in '89, was really big for them in terms of singles. They didn't sell a lot, but they had some unique singles. So they were able to hold on. But think about it. This is a group that comes out, their first album, they come out in 1974. So remember, these guys are like in their 40s or coming up on 40, 42, and everybody else that's coming out is about 15 to 20 years younger than them. So of course, you know, it kind of, you know, people kind of age out and it doesn't sound the same. Now, last thing, you know, the LA and Babyface situation. Bobby was looking at them like, who are them? He wasn't really anxious to work with them in the beginning because the whole look, remember, Bobby is the whole rap hip hop thing, and you're looking at LA and Babyface, and they're coming out of the whole Prince situation. They got the curls and the and all that, and he's looking at them like, this may not work.
Yeah, but think about what they did with the Whispers, and you know, so they had a sound, and it wasn't hard if you did have a sound to chase. You know, the label should have looked and said, okay, this is where the sound is. We'll pay the top dollar to get the sound, and then they can, you know, to do one or two singles, and then you build on the rest.
Well, the Whispers did that, didn't they?
Yeah, the Whispers did that. Yeah,
and you explained it perfectly, Nandi. You explained it because they had the sound when Bobby went into the studio, '87, you know, to make the album. The LA and Babyface and Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis were like the in terms of the black music, they were the hottest. They had the hottest sound, so it made sense for them to go get them, LA and Babyface. But again, Bobby is probably, think about it. Bobby is coming off of doing an album where everybody who's producing you, these people are, you know, 10 years or more older than you are. So you're, you know, so it's almost like you leave a New Edition. New Edition is, you know, New Edition is cutting the vein of older groups, but you know, you go into the Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis and they bring them into the modern era. But Ralph is still saying we still needed that New Jack sound. We still were missing that. So it's just unique. You know, age is really, really important when you start looking at a lot of these groups and the perception and all of that, because Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis are like maybe 14 years older, you know, 10 to 14 years older than everybody else who's coming out in the New Jack era, you know. But fortunately for them, because they're musicians and they understood technology, they were able to kind of like go into that era and not just jump on the bandwagon, but really thrive.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, we'll go through this as we go talk to our groups, but so we're going to start at number 9, as from number 10 upwards. I don't know if Sheldon, you know, last time I started and Stevie started the previous one. I don't know if you want to go with number 10.
I'm going to let Sheldon go, man.
That's what I said. Sheldon starts.
Okay.
And guys, 10. in the comments, put in your you know, you can put in your top number 10, your top 10 groups as well. So as we're going along to see if they make the list.
For my 10th group, would probably be. 'Cause I struggle with this, but I would say number 10, the group for me would be Today. Today is my number 10, is my number 10 group from that era.
Oh, Today.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, that's number 10 for me.
Okay. Eddie, was it based mainly from the first album or the second for you? I mean, which
Um,
one was it? Which one's
for
better?
me, I think, well, when you look at the first album was the one obviously that everyone remembers. The second album, I think it just kind of fell through the cracks. But the second album, when I to make a comparison, it's like the intro album, the first intro album, and the second
Yeah.
intro album.
Yeah.
The second Today
Yeah.
album was called The New Formula, and obviously it was a more mature sound. And I
Mm.
think that album positioned them to have some longevity. But when they dropped that album, like in, I think it was 90, 91, maybe, New Formula 1990. And but then next thing you know, it just seemed like all the other groups that were coming on, the whole Jodeci vibe and everybody else that were
Mm.
coming, they just kind of fell through the cracks. I don't know if it was a label situation or what, but that album, it was a good album. But that was my
Okay.
number 10 group. I love this sound. It made even though they were part of the groups that were coming out during that
Yeah.
era, they had a very distinct sound. The songs were great. Bub had a great voice. The harmonies were great. And then, of course, when you got down to the second album, The New Formula, you got other members singing lead as well. So that's my number 10 group.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I love their debut album. The whole GR production was at its full. I was not as impressed with their second. I felt they just went from New Jack to R&B and went too old. It felt a little bit too mature so quickly. But that was just me. I just felt like they went from one nice New Jack kind of young group, and then they went straight into some like I just felt when I'm listening to the album, I'm thinking Whispers and Temptations kind of thing. I felt they just went too old too quickly, but that was
When,
just me on the second album.
when you look at those songs, though, I think the songs, as far as the quality of the songs, the way they were written, they were stronger. They were stronger songs in terms of how they were written,
Yeah,
but you didn't really have anything that was really as memorable
yeah,
as the Him and Me's, Girl, I Got My Eye on You, um, those records. They had better balance.
yeah.
They had better balance on the second album, but shout out to Shin Beach. Shout out to Shin Beach. A lot of great comments. I see you there. They were trying to mold them too as the new Four Tops. That was the whole
Yeah,
thing.
that it felt that way. I listened to the album. I'm thinking they just went mature so quickly, and I
That
just
was the marketing plan. Yep.
yeah, and it just I don't know if it worked, because if you think of all everyone kept looking feeling younger and being able to connect. But anyway,
And Teddy was
Stevie
gone. Teddy
and
wasn't on the album.
Tevye was gone. Yeah.
Again, this is really tough because I've got a list of 15. And you just mentioned the Whispers there, and it's like I have based my 10 on the New Jack era, and I've also based it on, did they release more than two? The minimum they've got to release 2 albums.
Yeah, that was important.
Basic Black didn't make it,
Yeah,
but they in the New Jack era, that one album, as you say, is one of the best albums of that era.
yeah,
A group like Joe Public didn't make it. They released 2 albums, didn't they?
yeah.
I really enjoyed Today. Didn't make it, 2 albums. Gosh, so who've gone at number 10 then? Right. I've literally, it's so tough, this. It's so hard. Number 10, I've gone for N Touch. The duo released 2 albums on Elektra Records. I just think they were more different than everybody else. As well as that New Jack sound, they had like the hip hop, the funk. They had I just thought they were so different, and they stood out more to me. I know that Free, I've seen him on interviews, and he's talked about he didn't really enjoy the second album, but the second album for me has got some great moments on it. Ballad wise, there's Drop Dead Gorgeous. Obviously, the first album with Crazy for You, which we have talked about on previous podcasts, Too Hype, All Night. That first album, it's a great album, So, and I think the very unsung from that era as well, N Touch.
Yeah, one of them went in to produce "Cut Close" with Keith Sweat.
Eric McCain,
Yeah,
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 yeah.
lead singer. He went ahead and he did a lot of work with Keith Sweat on some of his albums. As a matter of fact, the album "Get Up on It," he's got some songwriting features on there as well.
yeah, yeah.
You know, and obviously Keith Sweat is also singing on Too Hype.
Oh.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
He's
I
singing on
like
All
him
Night
too.
as well. He's singing on All Night. He featured
Yes,
on that.
Mm.
In fact,
Okay.
they released 3 albums.
Too Hype, Too Hype. He's on Too
Yeah.
Hype, Too Hype. Yeah, that's what it is.
I'm getting
Yeah.
mixed up. They actually released 3 albums because they were called Touch before End Touch, and they did like a dance garage album, which had a few, you know, mellow moments on it as well. So very
And
unsung.
I think they were both on the Entertainment.
Yeah.
They were on Entertainment before Entertainment, before they moved on to Electra. But yeah, I liked them because they had it was a duo. It wasn't a group. It was two guys. So it was pretty cool. Real
But
cool.
well, by the second album, there was a third guy. You could say they were a group then.
You can go. Yeah, a group is more than one. So, doing my top 10. You're right. I had
They'd probably be number 1 in if we did a top 10 duo.
Yeah.
They'd probably be number 1. So there you go.
Well, yeah, we got a number. We can do that in another episode. The top favorite duos. But it's, as Stevie says, I wanted to put Basic Black in my top 10, but it was just that one album, and I thought, could I just squeeze 911 911 as a as a pseudo follow-up album? But no, I couldn't do that. But yeah, it was hard, so I just had to put them down. But my number 10 is Troop. And
right, number 10, what's going on there?
Well, it talks about the groups I had ahead of them, and now and I've always got to reach out to John. He is big fan of the show, big member, big, he's been on twice. But I think for me, Troop was always a group. Not only did they have amazing ballads, amazing songs, but they were the hardest workers. And everyone I speak to who have worked with Troop, I've always rated them as hard workers, dedicated, nice guys. But it's just the fact that and unfortunately people start comparing them to New Edition, and Troop respect New Edition. They look up to New Edition, but they would, as I said, not just the up tempo music, their remixes, their ballads, but their performance. I think there are very few groups who could keep up with them performing. It was just sad about management derailed them when, just as they were getting into the 90s, when they could have just been on another level. It just derailed them, and the whole industry politics just never really helped them recover just at the crucial time. I think they've been on Arsenio Hall more than any other group. I think they've been there more. And if you look at it, they've had over 6 or 7 performances on Arsenio Hall, and all of them always outstanding.
I tell you, so your nine after that got to be so hot. You put Troop at number 10.
Yeah, okay.
It's because there's no David Foster ballad on there. That's what's going on here.
Sheldon, who goes up number 9 for you?
Yeah, Troop is my number 9.
Okay.
And the reason I'm gonna tell you something about Troop is very special because I meant to share this, but I didn't want to kind of just like start off referencing someone else's platform. But I watched the Michael Bivins documentary, and they were asking him about other groups, and he was saying, well, it's a difference between what they were doing, New Edition was doing, versus what the other groups were doing. He said that it's a difference between New Edition's choreography. They were stepping in the tradition of the stand-up groups in the 70s, where everybody else was doing like hip-hop freestyle oriented dances. So that's the major difference when you look at Troop and New Edition. Troop was very unique in the fact that they really stood out from a lot of those groups because, one, the choreography they did was definitely over the top. They were very exciting to watch. It was more than like the standard 3-man group, 4-man group. How many was them? 5 or 6 members? How many members were there?
5 of them.
It seemed like it was 10 of them on stage. It made it move so much. But when you see 5 of them and they're moving and they're singing, and then they also had a distinctive 1-2 punch between Alan and Steve. So that was a good dynamic that they had. And then they had very very good songs. I was the same way. I said, okay, should I add Troop in the beginning, because they had the first album and then they had the second album, and I was like, okay, so if we're looking at the category, would they be a one-hit wonder if we just go on chronologically? But they're my number 9 group from that entire period because of what I just said. And obviously the Michael Jackson remake that they did, All I Do, that was pretty much one of their best performances. I loved the Spread My Wings, and their production was very good. The production complemented the group, because a lot of times when you listen to production from groups, the productions overshadow the group. I mean, a lot of guests that you had on there, you kind of shared with that Namdi, is how a lot of them, they had records out that were producer driven, and when you took that producer out of the mix, they just kind of disappeared. But Troop's identity along with the production, they went hand in hand. So that's why that's my number 9.
Yeah. As I said, I top 10 is hard, but I
mean, pre-internet, I never really saw any Troop videos or live performances back then, because I just had a basic TV in the UK.
Yeah.
So all I'm hearing is their albums, and I'm getting their albums, and I watched how their sound evolved from, say, like the debut album, which had some tracks produced by Chucky Booker. It was very upbeat, it was very funky, very, there's all sorts going on. And by, say, the Deeper album, which I think is just one of the best albums of that era, the way it starts and the way it's sequenced, and it almost tells a story as you go through the ballads. Again, they got Dimitri Ship involved, so that's where the sound evolved for me. And that's why I rate Troop very, very highly. Just on the strength of the Deeper album, which is a very unsung album, a very strong album, and obviously you've got the singles to back it up. Spread My Wings, All I Do. That's My Attitude. Brilliant new track record.
Ooh, yes. Great.
I mean, Mamacita, so funky, underrated.
Mark Gordon.
Mark
Gordon. I'm not souped, they, it's
even the ballads. They had some great ballads. I'm like, guys, number 9 and number 10, you do a bit of injustice here, guys.
No. I said,
really
I always big up Truth. I always big up Truth, and John John's my guy. I love John. He's So, but as I said, it is really hard.
I love Truth, but they're at number 10.
no, mine is mine's 10. So okay, Steve, what about your number 9?
Well, mine, I literally had a change. I've literally changed my number 9, and originally at number 9 was going to be Levert, and then I thought to myself, well, in the New Jack era, apart from wearing some of the most horrendous suits on their Rope-a-Dope Style album. Do you ever see them suits? It was like
red and green, the whole
what were them suits? I mean,
green and yellow,
shocking. And they did this track called Rope-a-Dope Style. I mean, it's probably one of the cheesiest. I love the track, but it's still one of the cheesiest New Jack swing rap, Rope-a-Dope Style. And I'm thinking, what New Jack records did they really do that I really like? And I thought, well, I preferred the ballads like All Season. Oh, what an amazing record that is!
Yeah, but thing about my thing about Levert is that they always looked old men from when they were young, and I always felt disconnected. Apart from Casanova, but I always felt that I think about the Whispers. I thought that they were the older guys, because even when they did just Coolin'. I loved Heavy D, but it just didn't fit. They look, maybe the Jerry Levert always looked like an old man, even when he was a young guy.
I like Just Coolin'. No, that was a good very cool record, that one. But anyway, I mean, we shouldn't just move on from Levert like that, because they did a lot of albums, did a lot of good songs, and they had their own production sounds.
They
had their own sound, and they did a lot for other artists as well, like there's a group I forgot, Rude Boys. They had a huge at the time, Written All Over Your Face. I was never a big fan of that record though, but
that was big here in the States, man.
It didn't do much over here though, but it was
it didn't do well. It's a pity that Mark's personality isn't as energetic, but his interview talks a lot about their work and their production and the whole thing and stuff. So yeah, if you haven't checked out Mark Gordon from the Vert, the only survivor member. Okay,
So
so that was
I didn't. They didn't make. They were originally number 9. I've replaced them, thinking who could replace Levert at number 9, and I guess this group reflect my teenage years, the youthfulness of them. They had some very big records. High Five, released several albums at the
Yes.
time. The debut album for me wasn't a great album, but it had some great singles on it.
okay.
It had The Kissing Game, which it's an R&B staple track. It still gets played today.
I actually preferred Just Can't Handle It.
Yeah,
That was
the remix, the Teddy Riley mix of I Just Can't Handle It. I think it was the couple of albums after where they matured a bit more. They worked with R. Kelly.
Yeah, the second album they did stuff with R. Kelly, which actually wasn't too
Played
bad.
Hard to Get was a big track
Playing
right
Hard-
on the third album. So it just gave me a lot of memories from that time. Hype, probably more than what they did.
I like High Five too, because for them, obviously, when you're dealing with groups, you're always going to have a signature voice. And
Tony Thompson.
Tony Thompson was literally the voice.
Yeah.
And then when they had, I think it was who was the one doing the rough voice? Irby. Who was the one? I Can't Wait Another Minute for Your Love. The other guy, I forgot his name. Tristan? Is that Tristan?
Okay.
Yeah. So what it is, they had a nice little dynamic there, but I like them because they had the songs were great, and the lead singer Tony, he had like that emotion, and he could do very well in the ballads and the up tempos. He just had a unique voice, even though he was singing kind of in the same vibe as far as the riffs, the way they were singing on the New Jack side.
Yeah.
He had one of the most distinctive voices in that early to mid 1990s. Very good.
And I guess when you guys listen to the interview I did with Bob Robinson from Tim and Bob, we talk about Slim from 112 and why he became lead singer. Similar to that whole Tony Thompson, there was no one that sounded like Tony Thompson, and the emotions he put in there. How that's always, you could hear the youthfulness, but also the emotion in how he sang. And Marcus Sanders talked about how when Tony sang, he just blew everyone away, and no one thought about challenging him or like, no, let's take some slack. Tony was just on another level, and he carried the group, and that's why it's always okay. So that was your number 9, Stevie.
Yeah.
Okay, so my number 9 is Intro.
Wow.
And I put them as number 9, really because they were not only with this, they came out with their own type of sound. They really exhibit that whole the untouchable sound. A lot of, if you think about 4 of their ballads being on Mary's debut album, but Kenny Green, probably one of the most emotional best R&B singers. Unfortunately, he just didn't get. Their songs were just so good, but I don't think they got the just desserts, the exposure. I don't think Atlantic promoted them properly, but that their debut album was fire, and then the follow-up album was very good as well. But they were different, they were unique, and they had their own sound, and they So that was Intro. I just as I said, I always really love what they did and how they stood apart and stuff, but probably didn't get enough credit for who they were.
The
Intro was. Go ahead, Steve.
I'll just say the first album, I played it to death, man. I felt like most of us did.
Yeah.
If you had a copy of that album, you didn't stop playing that album.
Yeah.
You could play from start to finish.
Yeah.
What made the album really good, when they came out, obviously when you look at the production, Untouchables and everybody, but it's kind of, the production was still in the same vein of now everybody sampling the break beats and the loops and things like that. But really separated Intro for me from all the other groups is that there was an emphasis on not just the lead vocals, but the background vocals, because
Yeah.
if you go back and listen to those records that came out, those groups that came out in the 90s, the background vocals are like mixed very, very low. And I don't know if it's the fact that the singers weren't really all that, the background singers or the members of the group weren't really strong singers. But if you go back and listen to a lot of those records that were made in the 90s, the up tempo, I mean, the lead singer's voice is just is higher in the mix. You don't hear the rest of the group, but when you hear it, it's like it's very muted. It's just low in the mix. But when I heard the intro album, the first one, my favorite song on that album was "Let Me Be the One." I just loved the harmonies. I loved the background arrangements. It was that song. It was, to me, that was like almost like a precursor to like what Blackstreet would do later on, to where you saw the background vocals high up in the mix. And obviously Kenny Green was a great songwriter.
Yeah.
He had a jazzy style like Anita Baker. He had a jazzy way of singing and a unique way of writing songs. They had a lyrical twist. They had a great melody. So even if you're hearing Mary J records, you can, and then you hear the Kenny Green records, you see that there's a similarity that's there. So I think that he had a very distinctive writing style that really put them over the top. And then of course, the New Life album, it kind of parallels the Today album. The New Life was a more mature album, and it really had, his writing really dominated that album. Of course, there weren't a lot of commercial records there, but I could listen to the New Life album from beginning to end. It's about 4 or 5 strong records that are on the first album. Come Inside was cool, but Love Thing was good. But they did the Ribbon in the Sky, and I love the fact how he kind of, when he wrote songs, he interwove like his family, or like it was like autobiographical in some of the songs that he wrote. So Intro was dope.
Feels Like the First Time is my favorite. I mean, it just do as I said, the backing vocals and how they just bring it, and it's whoa, whoa, whoa. And then, as I said, you had Untouchables at their best, at their peak. The whole Dave Jam Hall, the whole Untouchables around them. It was just, I think on intro stuff is, when you're giving out too many, if you give out, 3 or 4 songs from Mary's album, and you're giving out songs for other people, you're not solidifying your base and stuff. And so I think if they'd kept these songs to themselves, it might have made a difference.
But I will say this though, is that, when they put out, the first album came out in 93, the second album came out, New Life came out around like 95. But right after that, that's when he started getting sick.
Yeah.
So, and that kind of derailed everything, after that. So that's dope.
Yeah.
My number 8.
Yeah.
My number 8 is Levert. And the reason why I had Levert as number 8 is Levert were chameleons. They were chameleons because they could adapt to whatever sound, because they started out doing traditional R&B with pop, pop, pop. And then when you started seeing more, that was the ballad. But then next thing you know, come 87, now you come with Casanova, which was written by the Calloway brothers, who used to be with Midnight Star. And now you started seeing, obviously, that record had more of what the music was about to be coming out. So everything else on the second album was produced by Gerald Levert and his partner and a couple other people. So it was still, the majority of the album was still like traditional R&B, but with each album you saw them being able to absorb whatever the sound was. So by the time, you got to the third and the fourth and the fifth album, you start seeing the divide to where Mark Gordon was more trying to, he was more in line with whatever was out at the time. So if it's hip hop soul and the samples and the different type of records that you spoke of, Stevie, I think that's more of a Mark thing. And Gerald was more so, I mean, he wrote and they collaborated, but his thing was the ballad, like all season. I mean, if you go back to look at all those Levert albums, the ballad, like some record one called Like Water, just you knew that the ballad situation was his thing. And then before you know it, he moved on and he got another writing partner. So him and Mark never worked again after those Levert albums. They never worked again. If you look at the last album they did, the whole scenario, I think it was called The Whole Scenario. No, it was another album. There, you can listen to them, and they're copying off Blackstreet's No Diggity. They're making their own No Diggity. So there are a lot of records that they would do, and you listen to one record on the Rope-a-Dope style, and they have a record called Nobody That Does It Better, which I liked, but the drum beats and the patterns, it was in the same vein of the Belle Biv DeVoe's Poison. So for them, if I had one word to describe those guys, they were chameleons. They could really adapt.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a good run. They had about 3 or 4 straight gold albums in a row. So yeah.
Like you said, they did have a bit of everything, didn't they? From writing ability, vocals was great, and their own production sound, like we were saying before. It was hard to tell. Like I say, I took them out. I don't know what they were at number 9. I replaced them for High Five just because I guess it was how I was feeling at the time, that New Jack time as a younger me, and who was I more into. I would say, have Levert stood the test of time more than High Five? Probably. Probably.
I think that if you look in terms, they might have had a longevity.
Yeah, in fact, it's not
the longevity.
They've stood the test. I think they have stood the test of time more. I mean, Casanova, which wasn't a New Jack record, but that's still.
But believe it or not,
Still,
believe it or not, when that record had come out, when New Jack Swing was coming out, people were talking about like what was the very first New Jack record, and Casanova was kind of like considered, along with the whole Jam and Lewis, the Control album, some of the songs that were on there, those were almost like kind of like precursor, obviously because of the equipment that they were using at the time. But when you saw what the Casanova record, it had that swing type of situation, but Teddy, just took it to the next level, because Casanova comes out, a couple months before I Wanna, but Teddy had a different type of rhythm. He was doing different rhythms, because we know the Calloway brothers, who produced Casanova, they did a record right around that same time in '87. They were changing to more of a swing sound. They did a record called Don't Rock the Boat with Ecstasy from Houdini.
Oh, yeah.
And that record came out. And it had the same type of, they had the same type of vibe with the record or whatever. But yeah, Levert, chameleons.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Stevie, who's
number 7?
number 8?
I've got a tie here, and I'm going to put it.
No, is it number 7 or number 8? Who was your number 8?
Yeah, we're number 7.
Number 7. We're
Wow.
number 7.
No,
Number 8. Still, I've not.
Yes, number 8 yet. Yeah, he's number 8.
Right, I've got a tie, and maybe you guys can help me out with this, or maybe the viewers can maybe eliminate one, because I just can't eliminate either group. How can he? So I've kind of cheated. And it's based on the debut albums, the strength of both their debut albums. I've got number 8, After 7, tied with Boyz II Men.
Are you kidding me? Boys.
After 7, I forgot them. Yeah, After 7, that's almost like they kind of like were interchangeable, like with Levert. These guys were older, they had the mature sound, but they had a mature look, but their sound was contemporary.
Yeah.
So they kind of like fit into that. So you talking about Heat of the Moment, those records, I can't
debut album was a great album.
Yeah.
Ready or Not.
8 tracks on it, but it's you just, again, brilliant album.
Yeah, but if you see the interview, they said that they had to hide their age because they were too old, and so Babyface said, "Don't tell them how old you guys are." But they 6 months earlier they were working in a factory at Cavan and Melvin, and
those guys were.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm saying
all you got to do is drop the needle on Can't Stop, or drop the needle on Ready or Not.
These guys were like,
you know what I mean?
They were like 30. They were like 35 years old when they made their first record, and at that point, the average maybe R&B artist at the time, contemporary R&B, they might have been about 18 to maybe 24, 25. They said they were about a good 10 to 15. Remember now, when these guys are putting their records out, these guys, all 3 of them, are born in the 1950s. They're born in the late 1950s. So that puts that in perspective. Remember, there's two brothers, babyface brother.
Yeah, his two older
I
brothers.
think one is older than him and one is slightly younger than
No,
him.
they're both older than him.
All right.
They're both older
They're
than
both older than
than Kenny.
Okay,
Yeah.
but they're both older than him.
Yeah.
So Babyface was born in 1958. So that'll put it in perspective. It's like 6 of the brothers. So Babyface is born in 1957, 58. The oldest of these brothers maybe born in 1950. So think about it. You come out with your first record, you're over 30 years old. And at that point in time, I remember I had a friend. She was really big into the Uptown sound. And at that time, a lot of guys had the soft voices and all of that. And then she was looking at these guys putting these records out. And these guys might have been 35 years old. They had heavy beards. You know, they would sit out. And like, man, he sounds old. He sounds, you know, and she was probably about 21. And she was like, man, these guys sound old. So I think that, but it helped that Kavon had that voice. Kavon had that voice that allowed them to kind of fit into that time. It's like a Tony Thompson voice. They had a youthful look, but Kavon's voice had a youthful tone to it that made it work.
You know, there's a record on that first album that's as hard and as heavy as My Prerogative. Don't you think? Don't you think? Da-da-da-da. I mean, that is a hard. The second album, there's a track on that second album. I've never seen a vinyl of it. If anyone's got the second album on vinyl, taking my time, never seen it. Only got a CD. But there's a track on that second CD called GST, Good Sex Tonight. Oh my God. Oh my God. What a record that is.
And they could sing. Yeah. You know, they could sing. It was just like, and I'm gonna say when they
about Boys to Men yet, but After Seven. So sounds to me like we want After Seven to keep their place here at number 8.
Okay, so they make you number 8. Okay.
So what about Boys to Men then? The debut album. How would rating that debut album?
Yeah, but they're still going to be on somebody on that list. So we can.
One of yours. We'll get to him then.
Yeah, we'll get to them. So my number 8 was is Mint Condition.
Yeah, some good ones, man.
And I'm picking Mint Condition because, you know, we talk about how in the 70s there were group bands, and you know it was very rare. And you know, I've heard interviews from Jimmy Jam and Stokely talking about the risk of signing bands, you know, instead of groups, you know, in the 90s. They were fortunate when they had their record label perspective that they were able to sign Mint Condition and Sounds of Blackness, because Jim Jam and Lewis were just trying to put out good music. And we, you know, Pretty Brown Eyes, You Got Me Swinging. If you ever saw Mint Condition live, what you listen to on the album is what you get live. I've never, you know, I've gone to hundreds of concerts, but when I would listen to them, Stokely and the guys on stage, it was almost as if I was listening to the album. I always said that they were my favorite performance of a group, because they were just like the album. Amazing group, amazing songs, and they took their time with their stuff. You know, they weren't trying to be like anyone else. And they just had ballads and they had stuff, and Stokely's voice was very different. You know, he didn't sound like the Church group that you know, this kind of, he had a very, and you know, he was a drummer.
What number you got these guys at?
I got them at number 8.
Don't you dare put. I don't want to see Drew Hill higher.
No.
Don't mention Mint Condition number 8 and tell me Drew Hill at number 3 or something.
Remember, these are our favorite groups and stuff. So it's favorite. So as much as I love Mint Condition, there were others. So I'm not saying Stokely wasn't Church, but he didn't sound like.
He didn't sing like Aaron Hall or anybody like that.
Yeah, he didn't sing like the Aaron Halls and the Church kind of groups that were coming out. He was just had something different and stuff like that.
Big shout to all the Jodeci. We've got a lot of Jodeci fans.
We got a lot of Jodeci. We got somebody wanted Drew. For Drew Hill, number
Don't you
298.
dare, Namdi. You better be raising Drew Hill now. Oh,
Hey,
that's not bad.
you know, Woody's is an
I don't care
honorary
if
member of the.
Woody's your best friend and you've got him on speed dial. We don't want no Jodeci rip-off group in the top 10, mate.
So that was my number 8 too. Sheldon, who's your number 7?
We already kind of talked about it, but 7 was intro for me. I mean, of the 90s groups, a lot of those groups that were out, I heard certain songs, but the albums didn't really grab me. I either never gravitated to the albums, nothing motivated me to buy them. But I'm gonna tell you, when I bought those intro albums, and obviously the first album, like I said, just took me away. And I was wondering what's taking these guys so long to come out. And when they came out with the New Life album, it was just so many different, the different producers were on that album. But the songs, they really stood up in terms of the quality, in terms of the song craft, the music, and it was, great textures to the songs, obviously well written. So they're my number 7 as a trio. And it just seemed like they were a group. It was a trio, but you didn't get the sense that it was just Kenny and the other 2 guys. It was just very seamless.
Yeah.
So that's my number 7.
Stevie, who makes your number 7?
Intro.
Okay.
So there you go. We've done the intro now. I mean, what else can we say about them? But they just deserve to be in the top 10. Based on that first album. So let's move on.
So my number 7 is 112.
Oh gosh.
Now, as I said,
sleeping bag.
that their debut album. It's an album. Unlike most debut albums, you don't skip. It is such one of the most beautiful debut albums. And then they continue to, they released 7, 8 albums, and they continue to.
It seemed like they did, but they did.
Yeah. So and they kept working, kept bringing the hits and stuff like that. So I can't wait until you listen to the interview with Bob Robinson, because they were signed to him, and Puffy did something. Puffy came in. Yeah, the whole Dallas stuff. But I loved the 112. Loved Slim's voice. Loved how unique it was. Loved their harmonies. Loved the fact that they wrote a lot of their stuff. So as I said, I want anyone to tell me if there's a better. I wouldn't say they're a good debut album, but think about groups in the 90s. Song for song, just like listening to putting on the record and and just not skipping. Just not skipping any track. That's the 112 debut album. And then, as I said, they had hits from the other albums and stuff like that. So Go ahead.
I never was a big fan of 112 on the ballad side. I know a lot of people love their first album from beginning to end, but the thing I loved about 112, that their up-tempo records were so strong and so great. So I never bought the CDs. I always bought the CD singles. You're talking about It's Over Now. Just all of those up-tempo records that they did from the very first one. That Big was on. They did the remix with Biggie was on. What's the song?
I'm seeing, can't you see? It's
because you hear snitch.
Only You.
Only You. I don't like the remix of Only You. I love the original, but I just love the fact how it was a jab and it was a knockout blow. And I always felt that if it was Mike, if it was Q, if it was Duran, they hit you with the jab, and Slim was the knockout blow. He had that, they knew where to place his voice.
Yeah.
He would always kind of like take it home with the strong hook. And I love their up-tempo records. I wasn't a big fan of the ballads. They kind of they drifted and they kind of sounded like everybody else with the ballads, but Slim had that unique, distinctive voice that really made them stand out. And then I just love the production. The up-tempo records were really great, man.
Yeah.
But they all could sing. They all sang lead.
Yeah.
Shout out to Big Mike. Slim was like the guy. He was like, he gave him that, like it was a Tony Thompson.
Yeah, you gave it Tony Thompson stuff. Kevon.
It was like that voice just grabs you. It was just like, okay, now you know. Because if you pull him out, and you got the rest of them singing, they're interchangeable with any other group that's out during that time. But Slim is the one that kind of like gives them that for me. Yeah.
Who makes your number 6 then, Sheldon?
My 6 is Mint Condition.
Okay.
My 6 is Mint Condition. And for them to come out, when they came out with those 2 records, Pretty Brown Eyes and Breaking My Heart, those records were like, here in the States, they ate those records up to where it wasn't just like young people in the age group. You know, I was about 22, 23 when they came out, but older people loved those records. We already talked about it before with Stokely. He had a different voice, and if you ever seen the videos, he also had a different look. He didn't look like all the other singers, you know. So they had a nice vibe, of course, and they were really consistent from album to album. You can play the album straight through. They gave you a different type of vibe with each song, and then of course, you know, records like "What Kind of Man Would I Be?"
What kind of,
you know, just really, really great songs. And it's just a shame that, you know, for a variety of reasons, obviously you see Stokely out there pretty much by himself and you don't see the band, because it would have been great for them to continue to carry on the tradition. But we already know, you know, with bands and stuff, there's a lot of, you know, collaborative issues, there's economic issues and stuff like that to kind of keep people together. But yeah, that run from 91 to about 99, 2000 time frame.
Yeah.
Unstoppable, man.
Undefeated run. It's an undefeated run, that of albums.
Yeah, that's almost a 10-year run.
Undefeated.
10-year run. And you know what? And it's great because you had Jimmy Jerry, they were on Perspective Records for a lot of those albums. So I think if they were on maybe MCS, somebody like that, they would have dropped them a long time ago, because they wouldn't have fit the vibe in terms of what it is. So I think you got shout out to Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis for really supporting the musical integrity that they had. But great.
Yeah. Stevie, who makes your number 6?
And it gets so difficult. It's so hard from here on, because you could move any of these groups up and down. It's, you know, because they're all very, very strong groups. I mean, you know, 112 nowhere near. Nowhere near. You know, what's you are? I'm like, I remember first listen. I've got the, maybe I've not listened to it properly, but
you listened to it.
Getting past track 4 and falling asleep. I thought, what's going on here with this 112 album? I thought, you know, the club record, big club record, and then what's happened? Where, you know, I want more like just. But anyway, so number 6, a group that never let us down. Tony. Bags of hits, great albums, just a brilliant group. Despite all the split ups. You know, it never rains in Southern California. Well, apparently it does now. So maybe that has changed. You know, the Oakland Stroke. I played that. Well, it was the second album, wasn't it? The Revival. I played that.
Yeah, that was one of my first albums I bought.
Wore that vinyl. And then we got the Sons of Soul. Again, what a great album that was.
Yeah.
Unsung album. You know, and then you've got the one they released. What was it? 96, 97 album. Is it the House of Music?
And that's
you know, highly underrated album. But I just hope they make another album. You know, they're on tour. Who knows? Let's hope they record some new tracks and you know, put some out. But they have to be in my top 10. Have to be
in top 10. My number 6 is. I'm sure people would wonder how come they're not higher. New Edition.
Wow.
Number 6. Because the people I have above them, I prefer the music. As a
your reputation tonight, your reputation. It's on the line, mate. Seriously,
as an entertainment package, New Edition are probably, as I said, they're like the Godfathers. But music-wise, I mean, apart from Heartbreak, and they came out with the Home Again album in the era which we're talking about. I just think that the groups I have above them had better music. But that Heartbreak album is just, it was, they needed something, because when Bobby and Albie Shore and the whole music was changing, that Heartbreak album pretty much cemented them in history. If they didn't have that album, it would have been, it could have been curtains for them. That was the album that just helped them launch, and going into their solo careers after that album pretty much kept the legacy going. But yeah, I mean, as I said,
if you was on a desert island now and you could only take one CD, but both CDs were from the same year almost. Was it 96? Home Again versus the 112 debut album. Which would you take on an island with? You can only pick one.
Well, yeah, 112.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, I'll take the
Stop
112.
it, man. Stop it.
I don't skip that album. I listen to
Jeez,
it, and I don't. It's just one continuous album. Every other album I have to skip something. Not that 112 album. Not that 112 album. But as I said, loved Home Again. It had some good. It had some good bads. Hey, Slim sang all the backgrounds on You Don't Have to Worry. It was all Slim doing the background vocals on that. So yeah.
Name me a better 112 ballad than I'm Still in Love with You by New Edition.
Look,
Name me a better 112 ballad than that record. Same year. You can't even name it.
No.
Sheldon's thought. Are you awake there, Sheldon? The man's falling asleep.
No, it's no. I mean, as I said, that was still my favorite group. It's still my favorite debut album. Are you telling me that you prefer the Home Again album?
Oh, come on, it kills it, Stone Dead.
Yeah, Home Again to me, when you listen to like the 112 first album, the songs that I hear, it just kind of like flows like straight through. It's just one type of vibe. But the Home Again, I love the great mixture of the mid tempos, up tempos, and the ballads. It's more of a variety. It's more versatile.
Name me a better ballad on the 112 album, the New Edition, Shop Around. Let's put Shop Around on.
Cupid was better.
It out now and put Shop Around on.
No, to me, I loved.
You need to go back to the album.
No, but as I said, it was a good album, but it was not. It's not the 112 album. It's the 112. I'll listen to it today, and I won't skip one track.
Fair. No, if that's your album, fair enough.
Yeah. So who makes your number 5, Sheldon?
Tony.
Wow.
Tony makes my number 5. They were obviously in the New Jack era, but the great thing about it is that when I hear their music, it's rooted in like older music because they're coming from the Bay Area. So they're tapped into Tower Power, Sly and the Family Stone, and a lot of those groups that came out of the Bay Area. And they kind of were able to absorb that style into their songs. So when you listen to records like albums like The Reunion and Sons of Soul, those people were listening to those records, but they probably would have no idea that there's a lot of melodies, there's a lot of riffs, there's a lot of vocals that were inspired by other songs and other groups. And then when they did it with the House of Music, it was the same thing. So they were almost like, I like to call them human samplers, because they knew how to absorb. They really took the best elements of music that came before them, and they did it in a contemporary setting. And when you hear it, all you know, if you weren't aware of those groups from back then, that they kind of like, I don't say borrowed from, but they were inspired by, you can just hear that music and you can just be like, oh, wow, this is so good. Like when you listen to I've Been Thinking About You on the House of Music record, that's like in the, Raphael is imitating Al Green, and you listen to a record like Holy Smokes, Gee Whiz, that's like a stylistic Blue Magic Philly soul record, and of course, when you listen to the Sons of Soul, just they, and then they one thing that they were able to do that didn't exist in R&B at that time, they knew how to be humorous. So when you're looking at records like My Ex-Girlfriend, you know, and some of the records that were on that first album, they know how to be clever and funny and humorous, where that was missing in black music at the time. Black music at that time was aspirational. Get the money, get the Benjamins, this, that, and the other. We in the club. But, you know, when you saw what they were able to do with their songs, and they told stories very well. Shout out to Select Global, like Little Walter.
Yeah,
and they had the one record,
Just You and Me.
24/6, whatever that record is, 24/6, whatever that is. That's the statutes of limitation with the underage girl. You know, they were very extreme. They were very versatile, and then they came across really well on stage, like you said, Stevie and Amdi. When you saw all 6 of them, they were in the element. It was just like they were like one group. Annie Mae was another record that was really dope. So when you see them on It Feels Good and they're performing, it's just like you see that's the classic lineup, man. So even though they're out doing their thing as the 3 frontmen, I like Gap Band style, the band itself, man, when you saw that run between 90, 80, 88 to 99, hey, man, that's it.
Yeah. Stevie, who makes your number 5?
Again, it's so tough because I'm looking at 5, 4, and 3, and any of them could change because they're all. I played them so much back then, but Trooper at number 5 kills me to say that.
Wow, they got okay. Wow, that's quite high.
Should they be higher? You know, they could be higher. I love that group so much. You know, we have talked about them though, but yeah, number 5. I mean, I even liked the album when they went down to, you know, when they did that independent album. Is it on Busted Records?
That was the beginning of the end, yeah, Busted.
Yeah, but that album again is just, I really like that album. You know, really like that album. Again, so unsung, even though it's a very contentious album. Said it's not a Troop sound, but still a really good album, that. You know, so number 5, Troop, and we have talked a lot about them already. So move on if you want.
Yeah, my number 5, and this is when, you know, when you're talking about your top 5, and a lot of people are talking about groups like Shy and stuff, and those are good, great. But for me, it was hard for me trying to putting number 5, 4, and 3 in any particular order. But my number 5, I have to say, Boys to Men.
Wow.
Yeah, and as I said, I love their debut. I think to me their best album was their debut album. The ballads,
Great album.
the up tempo, when the whole singing and harmony, and the fact that they were different. The direction that Mike Bivins took them with the preppy, yuppie type of stuff meant that we weren't looking at another Jodeci type of stuff, and we could separate them. And then by the time they get to their second album, the 2 album, it just means that they just take it to another level. They go that Tony Braxton level where they're going to contemporary, selling 20, 30 million albums. And, you know, by the time they do their 3rd album, they have the sort of split with Mike Bivins and the whole issues with Motown. And I wasn't a big fan of the whole sound direction. I thought they should have just stayed in their lane for their 3rd album. But you know, no one can just deny that they didn't have ballads and hits. And one of my favorite songs ever is On Bending Knees, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. And when Wanye always bringing it home, as I said, it's very hard just to squeeze them in at number 5 instead of anything higher. But they just, that's me. No one can deny Boys to Men.
Wow.
Sheldon, number 4.
Number 4 for me is Guy.
Wow.
Guy. Now, I'm gonna tell you this. Number 4 for me is Guy. And then the reason what I did when I started putting my list together, it was kind of like based on the criteria. And you know, if I'm dealing with just my personal taste, they could be higher. But the reason why I had them, they're still in my top 5. And you know, we've talked about Guy forever. And I just love everything about them, from the music to the style. The songs kind of like the up-tempo records were very, very good. It was just everything about them. They were perfection. They for me, they were a perfect group. The first album was really dope. They ushered in what was missing in black music at the time. You know, funky music was kind of like fading away. It was like the big super ballads or whatever that is, but on a big, you know, it was tight. It was just a tight package, and you saw three of them doing their thing, and I just love this string of records, man. I mean, you talking about the first album is almost like a greatest hits album within itself. And then when they did the second album, I loved the second album a lot when it was out, but to me, the second album really didn't age that well.
Yeah.
It was a dope album, but it didn't age that well. I don't know, for a variety of reasons, but I still go to it every now and then. But the first one was really, really good for me. But that second album it's a lot of highlights on there, man. I loved Want to Get With You. I love the remix that Dog Me Out. Obviously, you got to shout out to Damien because Damien was doing his thing on that one. The ballads were cool. You know, Tease Me Tonight, Let's Chill were really, really dope.
Smile.
But Smile was cool. Smile was good.
What did you think of the Gap Band cover?
Yearning for Your Love.
Yearning for Your Love. I was like, wow, it made sense. For them to do that, I said, okay, now they're coming full circle, because the Gap Band references were always, you know, lingering over them. And then of course when they came out, I was excited when they came out with the Guy 3 album.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
And it's just too bad the implosion really started momentum for us to see what they could really do. Timmy Gatlin was a Select Global. Timmy Gatlin was a major force.
Yeah.
But at least we got to see, you know, the different vibes, different sides of them.
Yeah.
Timmy era, Damien era. But you know, you can't dismiss their style and their image and the flavor. You know, so yeah, that's my number 4.
Okay, I remember if you listen to Chucky, his favorite song ever is "Yearning for Your Love," and I said, by the Gap Band. And I said, no, I prefer the Guy album version, and you know, trying not to be disrespectful. It was like, ooh, no, you know, it was like, no, it's nothing like the original. And I'm like,
Yearning for Your Love is kind of like synthetic.
Yeah, he's, you know,
you look at the Guy version, a little bit on the synthetic side, but when you look at the Gap Band version, the way it's lush and it builds up, and of course that's the technology for you. But
then he says it's like he did the remake of All I Do from the Jacksons for Troop, and as much as he loves that, it's not as good as the original. And he was like, yeah, no. So as I said, it's funny because I actually listened to the Guy version before I listened to the Gap Band version. So, but Guy is a good hit. Stevie, who makes your number 4?
Well, we've already talked about him, and again, they could be a few notches higher, but Mint Condition.
Okay, they get higher for you. That's good.
I'm going to highlight the first album, the Meant to Be Mint album. Or was that the second one? No, the first album with Are You Free on. Again, because they kind of split it between the up tempos and the ballads. It's an LP that I wore out. I just love that album. There's that Minneapolis funk sound to it with Jesse Johnson on production. The second album, I was umming and ahhing about the second album. There was bits that I liked about it because they changed the sound a bit, and I wasn't quite sure, but I think it has. If I went back to it now, I know it stood the test of time. But it was that third album. That third album. There's a song on that third album. The Never That You'll Never Know. The Never That You'll Never Know. What a song!
You never. I loved it. And it's the vocals are soaring.
Oh.
There's a lot of strings and all. And then at the same time, you also have the guitar solos. See, that stuff is missing. You know, everything else is all production, machine based, and it's tight. But you know, you had a lot of room for a lot of different elements and a lot of those Mint Condition records. Yep, that's one of my favorite records.
Even when they left A&M Perspective, they went on Elektra and they did that Pain and Pleasure album. Just you know, there were some great songs on that album.
Yeah,
they could do everything. They could do a funky track, You could
Yeah.
do a great mid-tempo, and obviously we know about the ballad. So number 4 for Mint Condition, we have
Okay.
talked about, and so we can move on.
We can move on. Yeah. So my number 4 is the Tonys. Um, I love the whole Hey Little Water scenes, and I always remember Sinbad being in the video when it first came out. But then the Revival album was one of my first CDs I bought. When my dad gave me a little CD Walkman, and I was able to buy a
Good for
couple of
your dad.
albums, and man, just that feels. When I hear feels good, I can always picture the album, go back to that memory and stuff. Then they were just so they were just on stage, but then in their videos and just their songs, their ballads, they had the package. When I interviewed Damien, he said that the two groups he had, he would place Guy above, that were he would rate above Guy. Well, not that he put them on a pedestal, was New Edition and Tony, and I don't know if the Tonys get the kind of you know, lots of people talk about Jodeci and New Edition, but I don't think people realize just the legacy of Tony. That whole my ex-girlfriend, when I had a breakup, I'll play that track and I'll get over it. Oh, good. Yeah, that's this is why we broke up, kind of thing. I was just lay my
I
head
love
on my
the cleverness
plate.
of the sampling, that bit where they sampled Ice Cube. You can New Jack Swing on with it. Just
Yeah, you
brilliant.
can.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
so
yeah.
clever,
And that was very, very clever, because normally they weren't really big into like the sample and all that, but that was really clever.
Yes.
Um,
So fine
yeah.
is good. Lay your head on my pillow. And
Here's a Southern
anniversary was just.
Anniversary.
I mean, it's yeah, goodness. That's a very emotional track. I mean, it's they. I don't know if people give them the respect that they deserve and stuff. I don't know if people forget. As I said, I'm not getting into politics of the band of Tony and the three guys who would have the figures, but it's just the fact that as a collective they made
As a collective, there you
amazing
go.
music, and I
When you-
don't know if they get the legacy that people that they should get. They weren't like they didn't stand out like Guy did, and they didn't have the whole fanfare New Edition or sell the records of Boys to Men, but they were consistent from the 80s, 90s, and yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. When you look at the bands, because Tony is a band, So when you look at and Select Global, I feel what you're saying. I kind of concur with that. The music has a timeless, it's not dated.
Yeah.
So when you look at between Tony, and Mint Condition, those were the twin pillars that was keeping the musicianship alive. Everything was all producer driven, singular producers with the equipment and all of that. But self-contained, that's the best word. Self-contained, them in Mint Condition. Absolutely.
So who makes your number 3?
Okay, I'm gonna throw you a curve, and Cass might be looking at me like, man, what is he talking about? I'm gonna put it in perspective best as I can. Okay, Cameo. Cameo is my number 3, and the reason why I say Cameo is my number 3, obviously, maybe got to be of a certain age, but Cameo was a group. When I say chameleons, they started out imitating like George Clinton, the whole P-Funk situation. Then they came into their sound, they were able to do a lot of things good all in one. So they could have an album. They could give you rock music. They could do reggae music. They could do ballads. They could do up-tempo funk. You're talking about three albums that they did. They had She's Strange, they had Single Life, and Word Up. Those 3 albums right there were like a trilogy, and they killed it, man. When you listen to an album, and you can see they can do so many different things at once. Because everybody, of course, as a certain age, they're gonna be like, nah, Cameo, nah, not that high. What you have to understand is that you have to be a musician to be able to identify what they were doing. So I'll just say this: what Tony were doing at the time, they were doing it before. And why they're so important, why they rate so high to me, is that Black music was starting to be marginalized, to where you either had to be, Anita Baker, or you had to be this person, Michael Jackson, and they were down in the middle, and they had a lane where they outlasted every group that had come out with them from 76, 77 on. And every album they put out, with the exception of one, for like 13 years, they would go. It's gold. It was a gold album or platinum album. I know Big Mike don't agree with me, but we're talking about the era 85 to 2000, 85 and 97. So they're right in the pocket of that time frame. But of course, those records they made were 35 and 40 years ago. So of course, some of these people may be 30 years old now. They may be 30, so they might have been made those records when they were born. But I always like to look at the whole continuum, the whole picture of the Black music aspect of it. And Cameo was kind of more of a modern group. And they fell right when the New Jack Swing came out. They couldn't really did it. They tried to pull it off. But you're talking about every album going gold. They did like 10 to 12 albums. So you got 10 to 12 albums and 7 to 8 of them will go to platinum. That says a lot.
Exactly.
For who you are.
If we're talking New Jack Swing and you're into your New Jack Swing, you need to realize where that came from. And it came from groups like Cameo, from the Gap Band, from Zap. You need to, if you've not investigated that side of the late 70s going into the 80s, you need to, you know what I mean? You need, because there's some great stuff there. And like you say, that trilogy from about 85, 84, 85 from Cameo was a great trio. Like you say, the albums got some great tracks on them.
Yeah. Stevie, who makes your number 3?
Again, a lot of chopping and changing, but Jodeci at number 3 for me.
Okay.
Based obviously on, they made 3 albums. For a lot of us, you could argue what side of Jodeci were you on? Were you on the ballad side or was you on the up-tempo side? I mean, for me, they got it right both ways. On the first album, I love both the up-tempo and the ballad side of that first album. I think, this might be a bit controversial. I think the image they had on the second album was it looks a bit ridiculous now. I just don't think it stands it's like they look like a bunch of lumberjack men. You could say I'm seeing some comments like they influenced the way R&B groups dressed. Yeah, but do you really, is that what you want for an R&B group on that second album? I don't know. Do I want to look like a fireman, a lumberjack man? I don't know, but listen, that the ballads on that second album, classics. You can't argue, classics. The third album with Devontae Swing's production, he kind of developed his. Well, he peaked. His sound peaked by that third album for me. And again, that had some really good ballads on it.
The second album you see what Jodeci's wearing, they're wearing like those are like scuba suits. With the overall, with the rubber.
It's just not a good look now. It looks as ridiculous as the Levert Rope-a-Dope style album for me. But
think about it, is a lot of the looks, a lot of that stuff, it really hasn't aged well. I'm
no Mr. Fashion here. You know what I mean? I can't really speak, but it just doesn't. It's not stood the test of time. Some of the music on the album, the first half of it has. With Fiending. That for Cry for You. Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
They were good. They were good. As a matter of fact, it was just that the songs, obviously, Casey and JoJo's voices were really good, but the back and forth between them. But I just think the whole package. But when you just remove the look, and I'll just say, if you just you turn the light out and put those songs on, that's what it's like. The vibe of those records were just so good, man.
Yeah.
It was like you could just close your eyes, and the songs were very visual. They had very seductive. Just the whole studio element to that music was really, really good.
Yeah. My number 3 is and I've just swapped it around now. It's Blackstreet.
Wow.
And I probably would have put them high. The fact that I just wasn't too pleased with the fact that it kept changing. Although and it's hard to tell me which version of Blackstreet was my favorite, the first or the second. Definitely, but the reason why I put them lower than number two was because unfortunately Teddy didn't want to continue. Teddy probably was looking at the West Coast Dre and looked a little bit of Jodeci when he did Blackstreet, and he didn't, and he could have been original with what they were doing, but just didn't trust what was going on, and he was looking at what was selling on the West Coast. So although I love the Blackstreet debut album, I think it probably had three songs that they could have removed. You know, Give Me That Pump Bump. They could have removed a few, two or three songs from that, and it would have been a much better album. But I do prefer the first album to the second album, which was more successful. You know, everyone keeps telling me that if we had Joe Stonestreet in the band, if he had been able, that the version of the debut album that he sang was, you know, no disrespect to Dave Hollister, but he just blew them away. He was up there with Deezo and Aaron Hall, but even they said he was so much more one take when he performed this stuff. So I think that was always a hard thing because people do have their picks and says, oh, the first and second album and stuff. But and then, you know, by the time they did the third album and all the politics and stuff, but Blackstreet makes my number three.
Yeah, Blackstreet was dope. Teddy's production style was kind of like in the vein of hip hop soul. That was his version of doing the hip hop soul. But instead of him just sampling stuff, the songs, he's replaying them. So if you listen to the Good Life, he's replaying the whole vibe of the TS Monk, Boom Boom V. You're listening to there's a lot of different records that he's actually replaying.
He's copying Dre. He's doing a lot of George Clinton, which wasn't, you know, he used to do a lot of James Brown stuff. Then all of a sudden,
Booty Call, Booty Call, because that's him and Eric. Him and Eric Sermon. So when you're looking at that, that's that funk. Eric Sermon is doing it. I think they did that record together. But when you look in terms of this, the whole production, is his version of the hip hop soul, because obviously you already said that record, Booty Call, but then you're looking at a lot of records like Baby Be Mine. I mean, the ballads were perfect. Were perfect.
Tonight's the
I just
Night
think
Happy Home. I love Happy Home.
Yeah, he's doing that. But when you look at the second album is an upgrade, and at the same time, he's doing the same thing. He's replaying and sampling records that come out before. But the great thing about the second album, it gave him more of an identity. But they kind of were recycling a lot of R&B records that come out in the past. But the way that record was produced, it was very clean. It was the background vocals were mixed very well into the song. It wasn't just the front, the lead vocal. The background vocals were mixed very well. And I think it was a good mix. It was a good upgrade, you know. And then by the time they got to the third album, it was a hybrid. You're trying to do a hybrid because now you got all these other different guests, and now your identity is slipping away. The group's identity is slipping away. The members are coming and going. Yeah. So it kind of like it goes down from here. But those first two albums, very good, very good.
Yeah.
I mean, really, if you was to give somebody 10 R&B albums from the 90s, you know, to go on holiday with, you'd probably give them the first Blackstreet album.
Yeah. I mean, Teddy was in a role when he did the Dad album, did the Bobby album, he had just sort of come off of Michael stuff and Rex and Effect. He was just putting stuff out and stuff. But the first Blackstreet album, you know, was that Party
yeah, exactly. He's doing Earth, Wind and Fire. Took the Earth, Wind and Giving You All My Loving. That's my favorite song on the album, because he's got my man Leon Silvers from the Solar song, and they producing it together. That's my favorite song on the Blackstreet album.
Mine is Happy Home and Tonight's the Night. I mean, it's and Physical Thing was my ringtone, not ringtone. My answer machine, when you call it, it'll have that and then
And I love how he did that, because what he did, he sampled the record from Gangstar. It was an interlude, the rap group Gangstar, and they had an interlude with that piano riff. The song was called 92 Interlude, but the piano sample is originally Aretha Franklin's song "Young, Gifted, and Black." That's where the original sample comes from. Okay. But yeah, it was really dope, man. I mean, you know, how he did that. He had a good ear. But think about it, like you hit it right on the head, man. Is that he in 90, he making these records between 91, 92, 93 to where you're coming off the Guy album, you're doing the remixes in between, you're doing a Michael Jackson Dangerous, then you moving on into Bobby's
the Bobby album.
Then you're also moving into the Rex and Effects album with Rum Shaker and all of that. Then you're moving into the third. I mean, so his run is really, really, really serious during that time.
Yeah. Wow. So Stevie, Sheldon, who makes your where we at now?
Number 2. Yeah. Okay, so before I roll into my number 2, I'm gonna give you my honorable mentions. I didn't put them on there.
Mentioned.
New Edition, Jodeci, Drew Hill, Blackstreet. They're my honorable mentions. So I didn't put them on there for a variety of reasons. It just, everybody else had it. I love those groups, but I couldn't fit them in based on what my criteria was. But number 2 is In Vogue for me.
No, this is male go.
Are we doing male?
Yeah, we're
doing male. I thought we were just doing groups in general.
This is male.
Okay, so I tell you what. Sorry, ladies. I gotta pull y'all out, and I'll just go ahead and I'll just insert New Edition in there. Sorry, ladies. So and the reason why I had them in there, but I'll just pull them out. I'll just put New Edition at number 2. New Edition number 2.
Okay.
The reason why I say, and laughing at me. The reason why I really had, and I guess when I go to my number 1, I'll explain. But I'll put New Edition for number 2 because when you look at them, you saw their growth from album to album to album. It was just, and they really had an impact, being young guys, and there was nobody else out there doing it. And then they were putting out records at the time when Michael Jackson was like at his peak. And their records, chart-wise, they would compete with Michael Jackson's records. I mean, 83. But they just really grew. And people don't realize that for about 5 years, just about, they cornered the market for young groups. 83, album was platinum. 84, second album is double platinum. Third album is platinum. They go into the Heartbreak album. That's double platinum. So, those guys, when all the issue, and another thing too, is when you look at what they had to overcome, they overcame a lot of things that really broke up a lot of groups that they would have never reached the pinnacle that these guys did. And then to come out with the movies and the spinoff groups, but just as a group of themselves, I think that the music was great, but they were able to back the music up with a strong stage presentation. Because you can have great songs, but if you can't reproduce them on stage, it's not a good look. And then when I saw them in concert last year, I'm listening to Ralph sing a lot of songs that I haven't even bothered to listen to in about 30 years that they did, during the Mr. Telephone era. What's the one record? I'm With You All the Way, Lost in Love. A lot of great records that they had that I totally forgot about. And then to actually see the women all around me, 40s and 50s, transform into teenagers again. It just, I had to put them in number 2, and they carrying on tradition. Everybody else is kind of broken up. They remain consistent. So, that's my number 2.
Stevie, who makes your number 2?
New Edition.
Oh, what?
You think about it, there's no way they started all this. As a group, even New Kids on the Block, when New Kids are on the Block, they say, well, you guys were like the first boy band. They go, no, we weren't. It was New Edition. They started it. We wouldn't be talking about male groups on this episode if it weren't for New Edition combining R&B, hip hop, so whatever, pop, soul. They started it. And as look at all their members and the influence they had on the New Jack era with their own projects. It's just it's too big.
They were a great franchise group, and I have to just add that they kind of carried on the tradition of all those groups that came before them. Because if you listen to interviews and they talk, Ronnie will say, "Hey, if there's without Blue Magic, there's no New Edition." Because remember, these guys are 10 years old, and they're patterning themselves off of groups who were like in the early 70s. So think about it. These people who they're patting themselves off of are 30 or 40 years older than them. So for them to be, and of course you got to give Brooke Payne, because Brooke Payne gave them the formula. But when you saw them, they always know, even though they were young and they wanted to do the hip hop, R&B, the New Jack Swing, they always kept the tradition of a stand-up vocal group. They always maintained that tradition, and they spun out of what was out prior to them, and then they carried it on tradition, and then they owned it to the point that when we look at, like what you just said, Stevie, and when we look at sometimes stand-up groups, vocal groups performing, we look at New Edition because they're not a boy band. Yeah, they were kids when they were out, but they are a traditional stand-up vocal group. Everybody else is coming out after them. They're like a boy band. New Edition, to me, they were never a boy band. But when you look at the New Kids on the Block and everybody else like that, boy bands. But New Edition is like head and shoulders. Anybody that's doing that thing after them, they're following that New Edition blueprint. If you were too young to see everybody else, New Edition is your model.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, I don't know. Again, it's the Any Heartbreak album. I hold it dear to my heart. I grew up with it. It has got a track on it called Boys to Men. We've gone from being through that era. We've grown through that era from boys into men. It's too sentimental to me, you know.
Yeah. As I said, I remember listening to Not Your Type of Not Your Kind of Love. No, not your
Kind of guy. That's your kind of guy.
Not Your Type of Guy. Love the track. I think when I listened to Can You Stand the Rain, I actually thought it was a male and female duet because I heard the track before I knew it was New Edition. That Any Heartbreak, yeah, as I said, they had to, that's a masterpiece. In fact, I had to stop putting Can You Stop the Rain Can You Stand the Rain on any poll because it always won. Didn't matter who they were up against. That's how much of a classic. And Jimmy Jam, I showed it to him, and he laughed the fact that we had to retire it from being voted. It's a beautiful album, and they needed that. And as we said,
I still think if they didn't have all the solo projects, if they'd released an album, say 1991, I think we would have got a great swing beat album. I think we would have just got an incredible album. But wasn't to be. We got Belle Biv DeVoe. First album was brilliant. We got Johnny Gill. That Motown album's a classic.
yeah.
We got Ralph Tresvant. We got Bobby Brown. We can't. It's too. The whole thing is just. It's huge.
Yeah.
As a group, man, that Heartbreak album the album is so strong in terms of just being a legacy record. You almost forget their previous catalog. It's like that album epitomizes New Edition. They made a lot of other records that sold just the same, if not more. I love Who's the Mac. Yes, I love that record by Ralph Tresvant. He's doing the Marvin Gaye vibe. But when you look in terms of that Any Heartbreak album, that album is like a jewel in their catalog, and it's almost like they never put out any other records before Any Heartbreak. That album is great, very great album.
We're forgetting obviously about. I think I may say Candy Girl. I mean, it's still a worldwide hit to this day. That record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
your mainstream audience doesn't know Any Heartbreak. They know Candy Girl though, but they don't even know what.
Yeah, you're right. Steve, I'm gonna tell you something. I remember in 2005, and the New Edition is probably they got an album out called Hot Tonight at the time, 2004, 2005, and you got people who are not even R&B fans, and they're referencing Candy Girl. I'm like, man, it's almost been 15 years since Candy Girl, but it just goes to show you the impact that those guys had to go from an independent label, a local group from Boston to grow into what they became. And they think about it, they never for maybe 10 years, 83, well, for about maybe 5, 6, 7 years, they never had a flop. Every album is sold. Great songs. You know?
Yeah. No, I mean, we have to, as I said, it's no disrespect putting them in your top two. My second is Jodeci. and this was a battle when it
Thank
came.
God he didn't say Drew Hill. Thank God.
Well, they're still number one. But when you think of that debut album, when it came out, I was in Nigeria at the time, and the the New Jack Swing tracks were more popular than the slow jams. I didn't even realize that the same guys who did Forever My Lady, because that my phone doesn't ring anymore, and all that.
Gotta
Those were,
love.
yeah, God,
And
those were
it's all
massive.
right. It's all right.
But the harmonies, and they, yeah, I think people miss the trick. I think they just listen to those ballads and think, oh, that's Jodeci, and forget that actually, as this New Jack Swing album, that was really tight. I mean, they had the right balance, they had the vocals. My phone doesn't ring anymore. I mean, I guess people. I don't think people recognize it. It is them. But that was a love that album. But my favorite Jodeci track is "I'll Cry for You." Um, what's that? Baby, I'm ready. The debut single is "Cry for Me."
It's Cry for Me.
Yeah, it's "Cry for Me."
And my favorite song by them is Whatever You Want. I Give All My Love to You. Just the whole that's on that second album.
Whatever you want. Yeah.
They go back and man, those first three records on that second album, great, man.
I mean, it's just "Cry for You." Thanks, guys. I mean, but that's my favorite Jodeci track. But as I said, listen to the debut album and just listen to the up tempos and that, and the New Jack tracks, and you'd be like, wow, I didn't realize this was Jodeci. I didn't, and they said they wanted to be like Guy. They came all the way to MCA because that's when they knew Bobby and everyone was on there, and they held their own. It's just that they didn't come into their own until they had the ballads. But think about Casey. His vocals were just on another level, and then you had JoJo just making it soft and stuff, and then Devontae just Eddie F was saying on in an interview that Devontae had like 10 keyboards in his house. He was just and he was writing this stuff when he was like 15, 14. All this "Come and Talk to Me" and stuff like that. So Jodeci number 2, just because even though they were influenced by Guy, they influenced a lot of other groups that came after them, and changed the music industry.
So
afterwards.
the Jodeci fans that are viewing tonight shouldn't be disappointed where we got Jodeci 3, number 2.
Yeah,
it is there. We are representing them.
So, Sheldon, who makes number 1 for you?
Boys and Men.
Wow.
Boys and Men. The reason why I say
Wow.
Boys and Men is number 1 is because for me, Boys and Men epitomizes a group. When you look at some of the other groups that we talked about, you can kind of pick people apart.
Hold on a minute. Run down. Just remind me of your 10 down to 2.
Yeah, go from 10 down to 2.
Okay, my 10 was Today, 9 was True, 8 was Levert, 7 is Intro, 6 is Mint Condition, 5 is Tony, 4 is Guy, 3 is Cameo. Don't kill me, folks. 2, New Edition, and number 1 was Boys and Men.
Well, you got to give me a good reason why Boys and Men.
Okay, I'm going to tell you the reason why I give it to Boys and Men. And I remember when Name and Jodeci were out, it was just people were going back and forth. It was better. It was a bigger group. And it's strange when you look at Boys and Men, because all of those records that really solidified their legacy, that Babyface wrote, they didn't want to do them. They wanted to do what Jodeci and what everyone else was doing. Babyface is presenting the songs to them, and it was like, well, we can come up with something better than that. You know what I'm saying? But the reason why I picked Boys and Men is that Boys and Men epitomizes a group. All the other groups that we talked about, we can kind of like pick them apart, and there's always one standout, and there's a person that's maybe the lead singer, and then there's the other group members and all of that. But when you look at Boys and Men, they epitomize a group because they all have unique, distinctive qualities. But when you put it together, it just really magnifies what they're all about as a group, because you don't have one dominant lead singer. And they've got a format, they got a formula. So it'll be, Wanye may start a record, start the songs out, and then of course you'll get not Wanye, Nate to start to kick the song off maybe, and then somewhere along the line you hear Sean in the middle, but you'll hear Wanye just take it home on the emotional side. And of course, when they had Mike with them, he would give them that bass vibe, and again, that's very unique because bass voices were missing in contemporary Black music back then. The last person you ever heard sing bass voice was Melvin Franklin of the Temptations many years before that. So I would just say they epitomize what a group was. And I think that's the reason why they never broke up and they always stayed together, and they're thriving. Like Jodeci is just catching up now on the tour vibe, but Boyz II Men has been rolling. They had, after the second album, went to the third album, fourth album, everything started to kind of just drop down. But the thing that made them survive was their uniqueness as a group and them being able to sing. People didn't look at them like they were fly and handsome, like the Jodeci's and all the other groups, but their talent won out in the end. And between those first two albums, you got to realize those first two albums are the epitome of somebody's entire career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As I said, after this Bryce Wilson interview, Bob Robinson from Tim and Bob is coming next, and he and Tim and Bob produced the 2 album. And if you ever saw the interview with Dallas Austin, criticizing Boyz II Men, Bob talks about the whole thing because he was there, and he clears it up. And he actually says that Sean is one of his favorite vocalists, and Tim and Bob produce everyone. So I can't wait to get that out there. But as I said, Boyz II Men, there was no competition with Jodeci. There were 2 different types of groups, 2 different types of styles, and I know that Boyz II Men wanted to sing like Jodeci. They liked the fact that Jodeci got the it's hard to say. They got the creed, the credits of these are our guys. But Boyz II Men.
I'll say this: the frequency was different because Boyz II Men, they had Jodeci had like a lot of the sexy songs and they had an image, but it was a different type of frequency. When you look at the Jodeci made good records, but the frequency was a little bit different in terms of when you see them. And of course, it goes back to taste because new Boyz II Men were always this clean cut look, and they were in an era where everybody was leaning toward where rap was really dominating, and a lot of groups were leaning toward that rugged, that look, and they didn't fit that. And that was a real big stigma. That was a real, people who didn't really like them that much, they look at them like they were corny. But if you look at it, time reveals everything. And Boyz II Men and all as far as the vocal groups, the Vegas residency that they have, man, they're head and shoulders. They're head and shoulders over everybody. Everybody, when you see the mountain that New Edition is climbing, that pinnacle, the Jodeci's kind of climbing that pinnacle, Tony's climbing that pinnacle, Boyz II Men is already there on the tour game side. Usher, Pinnacle, Boyz II Men.
Stevie, do you want to go from?
Name me. Let me pull you to task a bit here, Sheldon. Name
go ahead.
me a stronger ballad, a stronger Boyz II Men ballad than Jodeci's "Forever My Lady."
Hey man, I'm gonna tell you, those first 2, those ballads, "End of the Road." I'm talking about taste. But if you look at "End of the Road," they did the "One More Day, One More Try" record with Mariah Carey. They got about 3 or 4 ballads that was so strong and so popular, so long running.
End of the Road is a middle of the road sing-along radio record.
But think about it. We're talking about taste. I understand where you're coming from because Jodeci got some fly records. But when you look in terms of the impact of the ballads, from a fan perspective, it's gonna come down to taste. But if you look at "End of the Road," what's the one record they did that was on the Boomerang soundtrack?
I did like "Please Don't Go."
It was "End of the Road." That was when they did "It's So Hard to Say Goodbye." that was the formula, because once that record came out right there, every other record was kind of in the vein of that. When they was doing End of the Road, they was doing the Mama song from the Soulful soundtrack. On, thank you, my man, Big
Yep.
Mike.
On
Bended
Bended
Knee.
Knees is
Those
better.
records,
Is
those
better
were
than
like
Forever.
those
Yeah.
records were like sequels, back to back to back to back. And if you go to the RIAA, Recording Industry Association of America, you will see how big those records were. Now, in terms of if you're trying to get your girl, sexy records and all that, man, Forever My Lady, You and I, Cry for You. Come on, man. Come and talk to me. Those are some fly records. I'm not a Jodeci hater, don't get me wrong. Those are some fly records. But when you look in terms of what Boys and Men, just 4 ballads alone, their 4 ballads are bigger than a lot of people's careers. But I understand. They didn't have that energy. They didn't have that vibe that Jodeci had. But
So
they
are
wound up.
you truly happy with them being your number one male vocal group?
And you know why I have them as my number one male vocal group? Because I have a criteria. Now, don't keep me wrong, is that there's a criteria that I have. Because you always, when you start looking at my favorite is for taste. But when I'm also ranking groups, I'm ranking them on the variety of things. I'm ranking them, you know, the impact. I'm ranking them on their talent. I'm ranking them on a variety of different things. So that allows me to go ahead and put them, because if I have my way, God would be my number one all-time group. But when I start racking, that's where Boys the Men comes at, you know. Think about it, you know. I'm leaving off Blackstreet, Drew Hill for me. Drew Hill string of records, his string of records over 2 or 3 albums rivals Jodeci's. Their string of records rivals Jodeci's string of records, you know, and you can say that their legacy was just as long as Jodeci's. So when you look in terms of that, but Jodeci was a fly group. But I just think that also it was just that when you were Boys and Men were perceived as like a pop group. They had so much pop success in the beginning, but think about it. The pop success that they had sustained them, but the pop success that they had was the same pop success that everybody was actually trying to get to eventually, whether it was Blackstreet, whether it was whoever it was, that pinnacle, that's where they were trying to go. Even New Edition never had the records that Boys and Men had. They didn't have them, but they didn't need them. But if you look at that Home Again album, you see a lot of Boys and Men-ish type records that are on there. You already said it. What's the ballad you said about the Home Again album?
Oh, you talking about I'm Still in Love with You?
Yeah, that's the Boys and Men record. You know, so you.
I like it. It's a good. It's you know you're backing your argument up. Sometimes
yeah.
He's all over the place.
Yeah.
So you know that's what that is. But I appreciate you testing me. You know, but that's what it is. But I think that if you look in terms of Jodeci at this point, Jodeci's records, they're fly records, man. They're fly. You can't deny.
I mean,
Jodeci's
Boys to Men's first album, again, it's an album I hold it close to my heart. I still, when I go in charity shops now, if I see a copy on CD,
you still get it?
I've got 10 copies of it. Why is it still sat in the shop for 50p?
Man, that album sold like about 5 or 6 million copies, so they need to send you a thank you letter, man. You probably
copies of it
you probably bought about 2 million of them. Yeah.
Well, but Stevie, what makes what's your 10 to 2 before you get to number 1?
My 10 to 2. Let's have a look. Let's recap. My number 10 was obviously, to the viewers who've tuned in late, I based my 10 on the New Jack era and did the groups make, you know, more than one album. So they had to make 2 albums each, 2 album, minimum of 2. So End Touch was at number 10. Number 9 was High Five. Number 8 was a tie between After 7 and Boys to Men. I couldn't decide. Number 7 was Intro. Number 6 was Tony. Number 5 was Troop. Number 4 was Mint Condition. Number 3 was Jodeci. And number 2 was New Edition. My number 1 group, the reason why they're at number 1, I guess the album, I can't, can you say this about music? Is there an album that when you heard it, it changed your life? Is there a record that when you heard it, it changed your life? It shifted your life in a direction, because this is what this album did for me. Because after it, even to this day, 35 years on, I'm still buying albums thinking, can it beat this album that I bought that year? Is it better? And it's been an endless search, because I can't find an album that beats it. I just can't do it. It changed my life. I'm still filling my house with records today because of this album. And that's Guy, the first
I love the
album.
build up. I love the build up.
It changed my life. Did Boys to Men's album change your life? That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm pulling you to task. Did that album change your life?
It changed my life for sure. It changed my life for sure.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. As I said, there is. We've spoken slightly about Guy, but you're right. As a debut album, and as a debut album,
I've never recovered. I'm an alcoholic I'm an addictive alcoholic of New Jack Swing since.
Oh goodness!
Send me to read. Is there a New Jack Swing rehab anywhere? Because I need it. I need that rehab very badly.
Yeah.
I play that album in my car at least like once a week. At least once a week.
I'll just say quickly about that album. And as I said, the Tim and Bob, the Bob interview was 3.5 hours. So and he dropped so much stuff. But one of the things he said was, when he went to audition for Dallas Austin, they said, "Don't play any ballads. He doesn't like the whole ballads. Ballads is," and they were like, "What? Have you not heard about Guy and how Teddy made ballads that men could listen to?" Back in the day, ballads with women would get into, but he made them, from How Deep Is Your Love, but Piece of My Love and Baby Don't Go, the whole dialogue between Aaron and Tammy Lucas in Don't Leave, then you'd have I Like, wasn't released as a video single, but the fact that it's amazing how it just reasserted, just became repopular right now. But Timmy Gatlin's speaking at the beginning of that, the whole thing. Timmy Gatlin's first says "yep, yep" in "You Can Call Me." What's that track that Teddy? I want to get no. What was the track that Teddy was saying? Here's Donna. Here's Timmy.
Spend the night.
Spend the night. Teddy's jam. Yeah. It changed. Every producer says that the Guy album made. It was almost like for the guys in the streets, the hip hop heads could say, "Oh, we can listen to this." Before that time, it was. Yeah. Go ahead.
No. You're right. I mean, think about it, man. And I remember listening to The Future in the car on New Year's Eve. It was like now, if you say that now, you're in the car with 5 or 6 guys just listening to an R&B album, it don't sound so cool in 2023. But in 1990, we're riding around in the future on New Year's Eve, and we playing the song. We just soaking it up. And you're right. I made records where it made it cool. Because prior to that, if you're doing Luther Vandross, you might like those records, you hear them on the radio and stuff like that. But if you're an average guy in the streets or whatever that is, it's cool. But when you hear the Guy total, the lyrics, like when Timmy wrote "Piece of My Love," and he's like, "I can't tell you everything is going on." It was like kind of like a whole sinister street vibe, which is it was totally different from the Champagne and the Roses type of R&B that was out at the time with the ballads. So the ballads were edgy without being vulgar. Even when you're hearing Tammy Lucas, just she's not all through the record, but just in the beginning. And that album is really, really dope, man.
I implore anyone to, if my first interview with Timmy, we went through every track on the Guy album, and I thought, to me, it was like, if I only had just one moment with him. I wanted to go for every song because when you buy the album, it was written and produced by a guy, but they didn't really tell us who did what in each song, which album and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
Timmy talking about how each song was created and crafted and from Teddy's jam and everything. So yeah. So I'll just quickly go for my top 10. So I started off with Troop at number 10. I went to Intro at number 9, Mint Condition number 8, 112 at number 7, New Edition at number 6. I had Boys to Men. Then I had Tony. I had Blackstreet at number 3, Jodeci at number 2, and just like Stevie, Guy at number 1.
Thank God for that. Thank God for
because
that. I thought he was going to say Drew Hill.
David Foster.
And the reason I say this is because my whole entry into music and my love for music is Teddy Riley, and his production. After listening to that, I had to find out everything he did, from the whole Kumo D, from any Heavy D, anything he did, and just Aaron's sort of vocals. Even though if they talk about him being a clone of Charlie Wilson and Charlie Wilson being a clone of Stevie, but then how many guys on the street were listening to Stevie the same way, or listening to Aaron Hall, the Gap Band, and not thinking about, well, that's mom and dad's stuff. But Aaron Hall then is it's almost like how Commission sort of brought gospel to the streets, and everyone thought, oh, okay, we can be like that. This is how Guy, just the whole vision that Timmy Gatlin had, and it was very disappointing that he didn't have the ability to see out the vision. But yeah, you just can't, the whole thing that they wanted to do, the debut album, and then the New Jack stuff when they came out, the future could have been stronger, could have been much better, but it's you still have to give it to them. I think we had more of Aaron on the second album, and the remixes of Teddy's remixes on the Future album probably were his strongest, and stuff like that. So yeah, Guy, just that's definitely my next one. Yeah, big idea. We're going to do female groups. Don't mind Sheldon for jumping ahead and and just throw it in and vote. Yeah, so you could just have one female group in stuff. But guys,
Funny, man. Yes. So you already know what my number 1 is. So when the female group, I can just go ahead and just, I don't even have to what my number 1 was. You already know. I gave you all a preview.
Yeah. But guys, we can't do this show without you guys contributing and being part of it. It really makes a massive difference for us, knowing that you guys are adding your comments and stuff and joining in. Because it's these are all personal choices. You can see how I just scraped in Troop, and Stevie and Sheldon had them much higher. And that's the whole beauty about preference and stuff like that. But
listen, this show on a Sunday every fortnight, it's like comfort food. You come in here because you want to talk about Guy for a bit, and Teddy Riley and everything that's the New Edition, everything, and Jodeci. That's what we're here for. Yeah. I mean, if I was to tell you we didn't even have a show idea 2 hours ago before this show, but we pulled it off.
Yeah.
Pulled it off in fine style. And next time, what we're going to do, our top 10 female groups or female artists. Is that what we're going to do?
Yeah, we'll do the female groups. Yeah, and if you notice in the comments, there's a lot of people are saying, what about Ideal? What about Lade? What about Next?
So many.
There were so many. Shy.
Low Key before.
Low Key, Solo. There were so many major groups.
Yeah.
Shy was really, Shy. That debut album, If I Ever Fall in Love, that was, it's just a
Comforter.
Yeah. There were just so many. None of us put in BBD in our top 10. And that seems strange. Silk were amazing with Little G. Little G was supposed to be on the show. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, people. Yeah, I know that somebody was putting As Yet. So
they had the moment. They had
They had the moment. Actually, Mark Nelson is finally coming on the show, so get ready.
Don't forget to ask him about his debut album, which he's forgotten about on Capitol Records, please.
Yeah, I'll definitely. Yeah, Mark Nelson.
Get in your notes, and it's a good little album that.
Yeah, and ask him. Did Capitol Records treat him right? Because Capitol at that time, they were kind of like really behind the curve on the R&B side. So yeah, ask him.
Yeah, I'll ask him about that. Yeah, people's mentioned Call Me Bad. I mean, Brian Abrams from Call Me Bad. Loved him as a guest. And he was open about his stuff.
We were so spoiled back then for groups, so spoiled.
Yeah,
I mean, if we knew then what we know now, maybe we wouldn't take it all for granted because we got nothing now.
It was exciting. It was exciting to see, you see the music coming out and you seeing the videos of the group, because obviously the videos were the really, really big thing. So you can see those groups coming out and you can watch them. Watch the videotape. I had a VHS with all those groups on them. And I started out, my girlfriend went to work around like 7 o'clock. And I was watching Guy spend the night. And she came back home like at 4:30, 5 o'clock. And I was still watching Guy on the VHS. But, there's so many great, great groups. Soul for Real, Shamari, Minute Law. It's a lot of, it was exciting time that, like Stevie said, that we don't have it. It's a tragedy. We don't have groups anymore. We don't have labels that are out there that are really pushing groups. And that doesn't mean that every group that was out during that time was great. Some of them were good. Some of them were fair. Some of them might have been horrible. But the greatest thing is there was a variety to choose from. Great.
Yeah. So this Don Diva, this one hit New Jack, you probably just get Stevie with just a list, and he'll probably bring out all the CDs and stuff.
He can do it now. Stevie can do it now. You can put on the spot in 30 seconds. Give me you run down 50. One hit wonders. And Stevie, like, you know what? By the way, I just happen to have this in my back pocket.
Yeah, I would have. Stevie loved mine. I would have put Rift. But if you listen to their story about, they wanted to take them and go the Boys to Men route with them, the label, but they wanted to be like Jodeci, and it just didn't work for them. So, yeah, it's there's just so much. But I think, as Stevie says, and in a fortnight we'll definitely be back. But there were so many groups, we
could like break them into, like we've done the New Jack here. We could like move it forward and mention a lot of the groups that from about say 93, 94 onwards up to
the R&B, because
there was so many that we just ain't got time to mention them all.
Yeah.
And then Laura had a question about what synth they were using for the New Jack grooves and synth. The Yamaha DX7 was one. They used that keyboard, drum machine, or whatever a lot. It was a Yamaha DX7. And of course, later on, they used the MPC. But yeah, in that late 80s, going into the early 90s, that Yamaha DX7 was extremely popular. And people don't realize in the Roland, but the Yamaha DX7 was also the keyboard that was associated with a lot of those Brit synth groups. They were using the DX7 before then. The Oberheim, OBX, it is that one, OX, Toby Oberheim, OX or whatever, OBM, OB8. Yep. That's another one as well too. But yeah, this has been a great podcast. Great podcast today.
Yeah. So guys, we'll be back. I mean, we may be back if we can get one of our special guests. I don't know if you guys if we get him on then we may be back next week. But if we can't get him, then our show will be in a fortnight. It just gives us time to put our stuff together, as Stevie says. But as I said, so many, we appreciate you guys. We appreciate the time you invested in us, and we're going to keep taking this to another level of stuff. But anyway, until the next time, ready for the world. I mean, there's so many groups and stuff. Yeah. So anyway, Stevie, any final words? Then
just thanks for supporting the channel. Thanks for watching and contributing, and we'll see you again next week or in a few weeks' time for sure.
Yeah, I got last thing. Service One. If you want to listen to some Cameo, go to the She's Strange album from '84, Single Life '85, Word Up '86.
Knights of the Sound Table. I'm not going back way back there.
'81, yes, '81. But if they're really into the super tech
Alligator
stuff,
Woman as well. Alligator
82,
Woman.
yeah, go to Alligator Woman album. So that can go from 82 on up, and you can't go wrong. 82 to 88, that'll be it. Yep. I forgot about Alligator Woman. They were the first ones doing that whole synth rock, edgy new wave as a black group. Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, guys, yeah, there's so much. We appreciate it, guys, and until next time. As I said, the once we go live, you'd see stuff. So until then, we'll see you guys and appreciate everything.
D the poet, you're burning me, man. You just burning me.
He can go
D has been burning me all night.
Yeah, well, you're lucky he didn't bring out the four tops. So yeah, we managed to restrict them to
y'all would have voted me off the island. That's what y'all would have
four
did.
tops and yeah, all right, and the silvers.
Okay, y'all would have voted.